Would we like to get our first contestant up here on Spin the Wheel? His name is Gary Flinn.
Yeah.
Gary Flinn in the house.
Gary!
Is that you, Gary Flinn? Ooh, absolutely. All right, come on. Get your fine self up here. And then I step down, right?
Yeah. Or you can sit in those chairs back there too if you want. Doesn't matter.
I just don't know if I'm a prop or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You could.
A few things to say before I give this month's piece from my new book, just came out last month, called Hidden History of Flint, which has been a pretty good seller. So that's the front cover. It shows a 1920s image of downtown Flint. What is now the Huntington Bank building hasn't been built yet. And on the back cover, the colorful theater, which I think I talked about previously, was the Palace Theater, which is where, in fact, this whole photo is where the University of Michigan Flint downtown campus is now. And the portrait is that of Flint's most prolific inventor, Lloyd Copeman. Now, as for the book itself, of course, I've had 4 book signings. They all went well. In fact, at the book signing at Barnes & Noble, not only, they provided the books, by the way, so after I was finished with the book signing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they asked me to sign every copy of my books they had in inventory, making those instant collector's items. And also, last Friday at Art Walk, now this is interesting, showing how my first book continues to sell. I sold more copies of the first book, Remembering Flint, Michigan, than I did of my new book. And because there were a few people who only had plastic, credit cards, debit cards, and the like, I had referred them to going to Totem Books or Barnes & Noble, and that inspired me to go to Totem Books to check on the inventory of my books, and they were all sold out. And so I replenished Totem Books, so I sent them 10 signed copies of Hidden History of Flint.
Yeah.
So, and as I mentioned, my first book is still selling. In fact, I talked to the reprint department at Arcadia Publishing, whose History Press imprint publishes my book, and that book is now on its 9th printing since it was first published back in 2010. So after 7 years, it's still selling.
Great.
Now, and also I talked to the Sloan Museum, which is now top-heavy in the gift shop of merchandise for the current exhibit about the Titanic. But that exhibit ends next month. They plan on replenishing the mix on the gift shop and restocking my books. So look for my book at the Sloan Museum again in September. And now I'll read, this is going to be, well, they call this in the TV business a make good, because the chapter I'm going to read I read last May, but because of a glitch in Jenny's video camera, only part of my presentation made it to the camera. So I'm doing what the TV industry calls a make good. So I'm going to do the piece again.
Good.
Which is called J. Dallas Dort, businessman, Flint booster, music maven. Josiah Dallas Dort was not a Flint native, but he would not only become a prominent Flint businessman, but also a major employer who helped boost the city population, as well as a major contributor to the arts and recreation. Now, at this point in the video, Jenny will insert a portrait of J. Dallas Dort. Now, back to the text. J. Dallas Dort was born in the Detroit suburb of Inkster on February 2nd, 1861, the son of a businessman and Vermont native. He attended Wayne High School and Ypsilanti State Normal School. He left school to help his mother run the family business. His father died when he was 10. At age 15, he began to work at a crockery factory in Ypsilanti and moved down to work at a similar firm in Jackson 3 years later. Around that time, his father's estate was settled. In 1881, Dort moved to Flint and was employed as the clerk for the Whiting and Richardson hardware store. Dort worked there for 2 years before he moved to Saginaw to work for the Morley Brothers firm. He was there for a year and saved enough money with help from his father's estate to establish his own hardware business back in Flint with business partner James Bussey. In 1886, Dort sold his interest in the hardware business and invested $1,000 to begin his long-time partnership with Billy Durant. They bought the Coldwater Road Car Company and moved it to Flint, where it became the Flint Road Car Company, which initially employed 20 workers at a converted woolen mill that is still standing on Water Street at the Flint River. That is now the landmark Factory 1 on Water Street. While Durant concentrated on marketing the road cars out of town, Dort supervised production back home. Shortly afterward, Dort married his first wife, Nellie Bates Dort. The company sold 4,000 cars the first year. It greatly expanded, and in 1895, the business was renamed the Durant-Dort Carriage Company. By 1900, Flint was producing over 100,000 horse-drawn vehicles per year, earning it the nickname the Vehicle City. Dort had other business interests. He helped to establish the Imperial Wheel Company, the Flint Varnish Works, the Flint Axle Works, the Dominion Carriage Company of Toronto, the Blount Carriage and Bucky Company of Atlanta, Georgia, and the Pine Bluff Spoke Company of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Dort also had a hand in the Western Mott Axle Company, the McCormick Harness Company, and the Copeland Electric Stove Company. He also invested in Buick and in General Motors and owned a farm that raised prize-winning horses. Dort cared for his workers. He founded the Flint Vehicle Factory Mutual Benefit Association, which provided protection for workers in case of injury, illness, or death. It was the forerunner of today's Industrial Mutual Association. He was also a city planner and served on park boards, with which he had a major role in Flint's development. He served as a director at Genesee County Savings Bank and was president of the Carriage Builders National Association. He had roles in the formation of the Flint YMCA, Burley Medical Center, Atlas Valley Country Club, and the Flint Golf Club. Dort's first wife, Nellie, died in 1900 and was buried at Glenwood Cemetery. They had a son, Ralph, and a daughter, Dorothy. In 1906, Dort married Marcia Webb, and they had 3 children, Dallas Webb, Marjorie, and David Truscott. That same year, the Dort family moved into the new, large, stately home at the corner of Kersley and Crapo Street. At this point, Jenny will insert a picture of the stately Dort house. This was also the year the Durant-Dort Carriage Company reached its production peak and had a role in reorganizing Buick. But a rise in the sales of and use of motorized vehicles led to the decline in sales of horse-drawn vehicles. So in 1914, Dort began to liquidate the Durant-Dort Carriage Company, which ended production of horse-drawn vehicles in 1917. In 1915, the Durant-Dort facilities were utilized in the formation of the Dort Motor Car Company by J. Dallas Dort, which also built a factory on the east side of town. At this point in the video, Jenny will insert a vintage Dort motor car ad. Above all, J. Dallas Dort was a patron of Flint culture. So were his wives. In 1890, Nellie founded one of the oldest organizations devoted to music in Flint, the St. Cecilia Society, at their home. In 1913, he founded the Choral Union, which was a musical organization to benefit the city. In 1917, he provided the funds to establish the Flint Community Music Association, the forerunner of the Flint Institute of Music. Both J. Dallas and Nellie were accomplished musicians. He played the cello, and the Kersley Street home was fitted with an Aeolian pipe organ he liked to play for guests. Tragically, J. Dallas Dort was stricken by a heart attack and died while playing at the Flint Golf Club on May 17, 1925. The entire Flint area grieved his passing, with many tributes given by his friends and associates. His old business partner, Billy Grant, warned, "Mr. Dort and I were partners for 38 years. I knew the man. Flint has lost his best citizen. I've lost my best friend. I am completely crushed." Charles Dort Mott added, "I am terribly shocked by the sad news of the passing of Dallas Dort. He was my very main personal friend. Flint had lost his best citizen, and one who was never tired of giving his limit in work and wherewithal." Dort's death and tough competition in the 1920s led to the closing of the Dort Motor Car Company in 1925. The newer Dort factory on the east side was sold by Dort in 1924 to become the core of AC Spark Plug's main production facilities on Dort Highway, which was named in Dort's memory in 1926, as the state trunk line, bypassing downtown, utilized most of Western Road, which Dort has at first proposed. Dort had ideas about boosting Flint even further, which he had planned to reveal a month later had he not died. His widow Marcia continued to live in the Kersley Street home until she turned it over to the Cultural Center for use as a music school in 1958. It became the Dort Music Building. The Dort family contributed greatly to the facility's expansion, but during construction of the expanded Dort Music Center, which would have utilized the old Dort home, it was destroyed by fire in 1970. Marcia Webb Dort died in 1978. The Dort Music Center, housing the Flint Institute of Music and the Flint Symphony Orchestra, is a lasting legacy to the Dort family's contribution to the arts. And just as a reminder, my new book, Hidden History of Flint, the cover price is $21.99.
Only $21.99?
And my first book, Remembering Flint, Michigan, is still at the cover price of $19.99.
$19.99?
Yep. So I'll enjoy the rest of the evening with the audience, and I thank you very much.
So one more time, give it up for Gary Flinn. You can find his book, Hidden History of Flint, at Sloan Museum, Totem Books, and where else?
Barnes and Noble.
And Barnes and Noble.
And Sloan Museum, wait until next month when they may get it.
Oh, okay, so wait until next month until it's back. But one more time for Gary Flinn.